My people, look at the political chessboard right now, because what we are exposing today is a masterclass in double political speak that will make your blood boil. Welcome back to Power and Pulse, to our dedicated, unyielding global family. Thank you for your love and your support. We really appreciate it. And if you are new here, welcome to the front lines of Unfiltered Truth. We have a massive, deeply hypocritical geopolitical contradiction breaking right now across the global wire. The French President Emmanuel Macron has touched down in Nairobi, Kenya, attempting to build a brand new corporate stronghold in East Africa. But wait until you hear the real story on the ground. Because the streets of Nairobi are speaking, and they aren't reading from the official government script. Ordinary Kenyan citizens are coming out in massive numbers, boldly declaring that any contract, any handshake, and any bilateral agreement signed with the French state is a personal deal for William Ruto, not for the people of Kenya. The grassroots in East Africa are standing in absolute fierce solidarity with their brothers and sisters in West Africa. They are openly applauding the historic moves made by Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, who did the most dignified thing possible by completely shutting their gates to Paris. Yet, while the front door of the continent is being locked tight in West, certain leaders in the East are rolling out the red carpet. Before we expose the hidden evidence, the television confessions from French journalists, and the collapsing logic of these highly celebrated Pan-African speeches, let's do a quick pulse check here. Can somebody please make this make sense to me? Because let's look at the absolute comedy of modern African diplomacy. We are currently witnessing a bizarre, heartbreaking paradox where the loudest voices on the microphones are the quietest actors in the trenches. Now, take a look at the president of Kenya, William Ruto. This is the same leader who stands on international stages delivering fiery passions, speeches that go completely viral across social media. He tells us that the African Union is entirely unfit for purpose. He tells us that the global financial architecture must completely be rewritten. He stands at the podium with a booming voice, lecturing the world about how Africa must reject dependency, stop relying on foreign currencies, and assert its own ultimate self-determination. But the moment the cameras turn off and the applause dies, what happens? The very same leader who just gave a masterclass in anti-dependent philosophy turns around and welcomes Emmanuel Macron into the heart of East Africa with open arms. Let's exercise some basic common sense here. Since when did Kenya become a francophone nation? Why are you hosting summits for a European power whose military and corporate monopolies were just forcefully discarded by your direct brothers and sisters in the Sahel? It is a performance of spectacular hypocrisy. It's like watching a man stand in front of his community, giving an emotional 3-hour lecture on the dangers of eating fast food, only for you to catch him through the drive-through window 20 minutes later ordering the biggest corporate combo meal on the menu. The level of sheer unmitigated contradiction is staggering, and he is not alone in this theatrical display. Look across the landscape at some of the newer, highly celebrated figures. Look at the rhetoric coming from Bassirou Diomaye Faye in Senegal. We are being fed an endless diet of beautifully written, revolutionary sounding speeches. But if you look behind the curtain, the signature on the corporate resource deals tell a completely different story. They are still gathering around the same colonial table, signing the exact same lopsided concessions and playing the exact same game of geopolitical dependency. Now, let's talk about what actually happened in the Sahel, because this is where the truth becomes completely undeniable. The transition administration of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger did not just wake up one morning and decide to evict French presence out of simple boredom. They did it because they discovered the hidden hand behind their national suffering. Let that sink in. So, the leadership in Bamako, Ouagadougou and Niamey has presented explicit, clear evidence showing that external forces have been actively managing, fueling, and facilitating the very insurgent networks that have been terrorizing their populations for over a decade. Now, if you don't want to believe African intelligence agencies, let's look at their own media. Right? Just recently, a senior French journalist stood live on European television and openly confessed to the entire global audience that intelligence circles alongside external state actors like Ukraine have been directly involved in orchestrating and supplying tactical maneuvers that led to deadly ambushes against national defense forces in Mali. Think about the sheer weight of that revelation. The defense forces of the Sahel are fighting an existential war for survival against heavily armed networks funded by external actors. Yet, in the middle of this regional fire, while your brother's house is actively burning down due to external arson, you decide it is the perfect strategic moment to invite the suspected arsonist over to your living room for a friendly cup of tea and a business meeting. It is an absolute betrayal of collective native security. The citizens of Kenya see right through this. They are looking at the smoke rising from the West Africa and saying, no way, absolutely no way, not in our name. They understand that true collective freedom cannot be fragmented. You cannot have a continent where one region is fighting for its absolute structural self-governance, while another region is actively leasing out its airfields, economic sectors to the very same entities that caused the damage. If we do not change this operational blueprint, the future of the continent is completely predictable. And as long as our leadership continues to prioritize foreign validation over domestic alignment, we will continue to face the exact same results. The ordinary population will be left to eat democracy while their resources are systematically drained out of the ports. So, what does it mean to eat democracy? It means you are given a beautifully printed ballot box every 4 or 5 years. You are told that you are free because you can vote for a candidate A or candidate B. You are given a highly praised free press owned by corporate billionaires and a legal system designed in Europe. But when you look at your kitchen table, there is no food, no security. When you look at your local schools, there is no modern infrastructure. When you look at your currency, it is losing value by the day because your national gold, your oil, and your strategic minerals are locked in contracts signed decades ago with foreign capital. That is the grand illusion. It is a system that allows you to change the face of the manager every few years while ensuring that the owners of the corporate building remain exactly the same. And if we pass this compliance down to our children, we aren't just leaving them in a country. We are passing down a structural subjugation as an inheritance for generations to come. The youth of Africa are completely finished with this loop. Now, they look at the courage of the Sahel Alliance and they see a real, tangible alternative. They see a system where leadership is validated by how effectively it protects the soil. how aggressively it secures national wealth, and how unapologetically it stands up to external dictates. That is the fire that is currently spreading from Bamako to Nairobi. The consciousness of the continent has outgrown the old layout, and no amount of clever public relations can force it back into the box. The historic lessons we must learn right now is that our strength lies exclusively in our collective execution. The global establishment is terrified of a unified African front because their entire economic model relies on regional fragmentation. If they can keep West Africa isolated from East Africa, if they can convince North Africa that they have nothing in common with the South, then they can continue to visit individual capitals one by one, signing highly exploitative contracts that no unified continent will ever tolerate. The people of Kenya have drawn a magnificent line in the sand. By openly declaring their resistance to these state visits, they are proving that the African genius is fully awake at the grassroots level. They are demonstrating that the ordinary citizen understands global geopolitics far better than the heavily decorated political elites sitting in air-conditioned presidential palaces. They are teaching the world that true Pan-Africanism is not a speech you deliver at a gala dinner in New York. It is an active day-to-day commitment to stand with your brothers and sisters when they are under economic and physical siege. We must continue to amplify the grassroots alignment. We must use our digital platforms to construct an unyielding analytical shield that protects our collective consciousness from the sophisticated narratives designed to keep us divided. The old era where a European leader could simply fly across the Mediterranean to manage African resources through compliant middlemen is reaching a permanent, structural conclusion. So, the tide has turned, and the old empires are running out of territory to manipulate. Emmanuel Macron can tour every single capital in East Africa. He can sign 20 different public-private partnerships, and he can deliver the most elegant speeches about mutual growth. But he will quickly realize that he is walking through a continent that no longer believes in the magic tricks of the old world. The spirit of total uncompromised native command loses the hand, and it cannot be contained by diplomatic choreography. The history of this great continent is no longer being written in the offices of foreign ministers or the newsrooms of corporate media empires. It is being forged by the iron will of the youth in the streets of Nairobi, the unyielding resilience of the families in Bamako, and the absolute defiance of the populations across Ouagadougou, Niamey. We have finally discovered that when we stand undivided, the old structure of exploitation have absolutely no power over our future. Thank you all so very much for watching and for standing with us on this uncompromising look today. If you believe that the defense of African self-governance must remain a unified continent, wide front, and that no leader should ever compromise regional security for external corporate deals, make sure you slam the like button right now. Let's push this documentary directly to the peak of the algorithm so that every single foreign policy office understands that the grassroots of Africa are completely unified. Also, share this video with every Pan-African forum, every student, every movement, and every single person who needs to see the unmasked reality of modern diplomacy. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Power and Pulse today. We do not repeat the corporate script. We track the authentic rising heartbeat of a continent that will never bow its head again. So until next time, stay blessed.